Well, today we're here to talk about a very interesting topic, which is about genetic and adaptive behavior. This will let us to understand the individual difference and explain how am I so different from Michael Jordan, for example, while I'm playing basketball. Why can I play piano like Mozart? What is the secret? Shall I practice more and harder? Is there a genetic explanation for this? How does genetic works in terms of movement ability? Why are we so similar and yet so different? In order to answer this question, we should revisit a classical philosophical debate between nature and nurture. And this controversy involves the extent to which development is influenced by nurture or nature. Nature, if you recall, refers to an organism's biological inheritance, while nurture is with respect to the environment experience. According to those researchers who emphasize the role of nature, just as a sunflower grows in an orderly way, we grow and develop in an orderly way. As you know, we walk before we talk. We speak one word before two words. We grow rapidly in infancy and less so in early childhood. We experience a rush of sex hormones in puberty. We reach the peak of our physical strength in late adolescence and adulthood, and then we physically decline. Some research that highlight the importance of nature, they acknowledge that hostile psychological environments can depress development. Other researchers emphasize the importance of nurture or environmental experience in development. Let's look at this debate from a different perspective, from an evolutionary point of view. If our earned genetic code will define our behavior, how to explain the difference between human beings and chimpanzees, for example? Genetically speaking, are we human beings that different from chimpanzees? Not really. Scientists have sequenced the genome of the chimpanzee and found that humans are very similar to the great ape species. By comparing human and chimpanzees' genomes, researchers have identified several sequences of genetic code that differ between human and chimps. These sequences may hold the most promise for determining what creates human-specific traits, such as the speech. Let's watch together this small portion of the BBC documentary and observe how different our human motor and social behaviors are from chimpanzees.
If a male does get aggressive, a quickie soon calms him down. But there's one thing they do that really strikes a chord. They often walk upright, which leaves their hands free for carrying food. One theory suggests that our ancestors first stood upright in order to carry food back to the family. If you can make gathering food easier, there's more time to relax, socialize, and even plan ahead.
One of the things I find most striking about chimpanzees is they don't just do, they think. They'll often just sit for long periods of time contemplating the world around them. What are they thinking about? What sense do they make of it all?
Isn't it amazing how similar our motor and social behaviors are from chimpanzees? It makes you wonder if our genetic blueprints are thus similar from chimpanzees, what exactly makes us so different from them? What exactly makes us so different from another human being? Well, if you look in the literature, you're going to find several explanations based on genetic principles. But a very reasonable explanation for these questions that we are raising here is that individual difference can be explained by how our genes interact with the environment that we live. This is, how our genes will express or not in a certain living environment. That's not that complicated. Gene expression is the process by which the inheritable information in a gene, such as the DNA sequence, is made into a functional gene product, such as a protein or RNA. It is in fact the process of taking the genetic information from your DNA and translating into a biological function, such as a protein synthesis. Gene expression explains the effect of genes and how those genes will express in a certain environment. So let's think this way. We do have a very similar genetic code, but the way that those genes express, this is the protein synthesis, will be different from another human. It will vary not only because of your very tiny specific gene blueprints, but the difference comes from the experience that you had or that you have in your life. This idea is in line with the concept of a collaborative gene proposed by Gilbert Gottlieb. In 2007, he emphasized that what is called the epigenetic view, in which development is the result of an ongoing bidirectional interchange between heredity and environment. For example, a baby inherits genes from both parents at conception. During prenatal development, toxins, nutrition, and stress can influence some genes to stop functioning, while others become stronger or weaker. During infancy, the same environmental experience such as toxins, nutrition, stress, learning, and encouragement continue to modify genetic activity and the activity of the nervous system that directly underlies behavior. Heredity and environment operate together or collaborate to produce a person's intelligence, temperament, height, weight, ability to pitch a baseball, and ability to read, and so on. The relative contributions of heredity and environment are not additive. We can't say that such percentage of nature and such percentage of experience make us who we are. Nor it is accurate to say that full genetic expression happens once around conception or birth, after which we carry our genetic legacy into the world to see how far it takes us. Genes produce proteins throughout the lifespan in many different environments, or they don't produce these proteins depending in part of how harsh or nurturing those environments are. If heredity and environment interact to determine the course of development, is that all there is to answer the question what caused development? Are children completely at the mercy of their genes and environment as they develop? Their genetic heritage and environment experience are pervasive influence on their development. But in thinking about what caused development, it's important to think about development as the co-construction of biology, culture, and the individual. Children are not only the outcomes of the heredity and environment that they experience, but they also can alter themselves a unique developmental path by changing the environment. As William Greenwood, a contemporary developmental psychologist, concludes, the interaction of heredity and environment is so extensive that to ask which is more important, nature or nurture, is like asking which is more important to a rectangle, height or width.